Welcome to Sci-Fi-Legends stories. If you're enjoying the epic clash between humans and aliens, make sure to join our community. The mess hall on Station Theta 9 held 17 species at dinner rotation, and the smell alone could kill a Pelathi. Azaran Kushbon Kartufan, a typhoon of 1,000 cuisines, fermented Pelathi protein cubes next to Kovek mineral slurry next to something steaming that someone had labeled only as sustenance. Class 3. Quillith had been a diplomatic attaché for barely 6 cycles, but she had learned one thing: follow the smell that doesn't fit. Garlic, butter, fudder, yeast. Which meant the Korvac hadn't read the file either. She saw the human girl first. Small for a Deathworlder. Sitting alone at a corner table, legs pulled up onto the chair, a metal tray balanced on her knees. Brown hair tied back. Chewing something with her mouth slightly open, which Quillith's cultural database labeled as informal, and her own membrane skin labeled as fascinating because the girl looked like she had absolutely nowhere else to be. You'll want to know why 6 elite cadets surrounded her. Stay with me. 16 minutes earlier, the mess hall had been ordinary. Quillith had been reviewing trade agreements, pretending to eat her nutrient paste when a Korvac patrol entered. Silicon-reinforced exoskeletons catching the overhead light, each one easily twice her height. They moved like a pride that had never lost a hierarchy dispute. They spotted the human, exchanged a look that required no translation. The mess hall didn't go quiet. That's the thing about 17 species eating dinner. It never goes quiet. But the texture of the noise changed. Pelathi elastic tissue went rigid. Adorvati in the corner pressed fingers to its temples and winced. Telepath caught in the static of 70 nervous minds. The 6 Korvac fanned out, not subtle, not trying to be. And the girl, except she didn't move. She lifted her fork, a standard-issue metal implement with 4 tines, utterly primitive compared to nutrient injectors, and took another bite of whatever was on her tray. Garlic bread, Quillith would later learn. The human had packed her own lunch. As security had scanned it 3 times before admitting that yes, bread with butter and herbs was technically not a chemical weapon. The Toravec leader stepped forward, armored joints clicking. Deathworlder. The girl looked up, chewed, swallowed. The Korvac leader's name was Tarvik. Quillith looked it up later in the incident report that would take 3 departments 6 hours to file. He said, "You're surrounded." The girl looked at the 6 exoskeletons boxing her in, looked at the fork in her hand, looked back at Tarvik. She took another bite. The first attacker lunged. Quillith's membrane skin went transparent. She couldn't stop it, the stress response firing before her brain caught up. The Korvac's reinforced arm came down like a maintenance beam. The girl blocked it with her forearm. Crack. Not bone, the sound of silicon exoskeleton meeting human radius, and something in that impact was wrong because the Korvac stepped back. The girl didn't. She was still chewing. The second attacker hit her from behind. Full body slam. Enough force to crater Pelathi deck plating. The girl absorbed it, staggered forward half a step, and turned around. Food still in her mouth. Eyes still calm. Quillith had seen diplomatic incidents. She had seen posturing, threats, the careful choreography of interspecies violence where everyone knew the rules. This was not that. This was a creature from a planet that killed 87% of its own biology just existing, and she was treating 6 armored elites like they were traffic on an Earth urban street. Gone. That was the thought. Just gone. All the diplomatic training, all the protocols, gone. The girl grabbed 2 Korvac by their rigid shoulder joints, the one place silicon reinforcement couldn't bend, and pivoted. Just pivoted. Their own momentum carried them into each other, with a sound like rocks breaking. The mess hall floor vibrated. Tarvik shouted something. His pride hierarchy was collapsing in real time, and he knew it, and he couldn't stop it because the human wasn't fighting him. She was fighting the geometry, using their own size against them, funneling 6 into pairs into single file into a knot of armored bodies that blocked each other's attack angles. She blocked 2 strikes simultaneously. Left arm up, right arm up, fork still in her right hand, and Quillith's cultural database did not have a category for that. The Korvac hadn't read the file. None of them had read the file, because if they had read the file, they would have known that the human baseline for fighting was not a martial art. It was a Tuesday, then it was over. The girl sat back down, picked up the fork, took another bite of her garlic bread. One of the Korvac was on the floor, joints locked in a defensive curl. The SS-7 response, Quailith later learned, an involuntary armor plate lock triggered by proximity to a predator. The others had backed against the wall. Tarvik stood in the middle of his broken formation, exoskeleton intact, pride absolutely shattered. The girl looked up at him. Chewed. Swallowed. "I put this on everything," she said, gesturing with the fork at her tray. A Dorvathy in the corner started bleeding from the nose, too much human emotional signal flooding the telepathic band. Not aggression. Not fear. Contentment? The girl was genuinely enjoying her lunch. 3 hours later, Quailith stood in a conference room watching officers from 3 separate departments argue about a fork. "How do I even file this?" the records officer whispered. The fork sat in an evidence bag, Exhibit C. The human had used it to eat, also to block, also to gesture, also to, and this was the part that kept Quailith's membrane flickering, absolutely nothing else. It was just a fork. 4 tines. Metal. Primitive. And 3 grown interspecies officers were debating whether to classify it as a Class 12 melee implement. The data reveal came through dialogue, not report. A xenobiologist reading scanner results aloud because she didn't believe them. Human blood volume loss survival, 40%. Korvek critical threshold, 8%. Humans enter voluntary unconsciousness for 8 hours nightly on a planet that can kill them in minutes. Human infant survival rate on Earth, 99.7%, despite 8.7 million competing species. The xenobiologist stopped reading, looked up, said, "This isn't combat training. This is just what they are." Which meant the Academy had been wrong about everything. The next morning, Rule 14b went into effect. Quailith read it standing in the corridor outside her quarters, her membrane skin flickering one final time as she watched the human girl walk past Gemma. She had a name. She was cheerful, and wave at a group of Palathi who immediately went rigid. Rule 14b, maintain a minimum distance of 2 meters when passing human personnel, especially when they are eating. The fork was mounted in a display case near the main entrance. The plaque read, "Human Dinning Implement, Class 12 Threat, Assessment Pending." 3 different departments had signed off on the language. None of them had been happy about it. Quailith watched Gemma walk toward the mess hall. Same brown hair, same calm, same terrifying contentment. When she was gone, the floor felt lighter, like gravity had lifted its weight.